Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. It's my honor to welcome Rachel Azaria, member of the Israeli Knesset representing the Kulanu Party. My name is Deborah Schaefer-Seaman. I am RAVSAK's network weaver, and it's my privilege to welcome my friend, our colleague, and our representative of the people of Israel today. Rachel previously served as the Deputy Mayor of Jerusalem and City Councilwoman. She started her political career in activist circles of environmentalism and Jewish law concerning women's rights. Azaria established the Yerushalmim political party 7 years ago, representing young religious and secular residents of Jerusalem. She led campaigns for pluralism in Jerusalem and was instrumental in bringing free education for children ages 3 and older. Rachel Azaria lives in Jerusalem with her husband and her 4 children, where it is currently 10 o'clock at night, for which we are eternally grateful. Rachel Azaria, welcome. Member of Knesset Azaria will give us a 15-minute briefing. All of our lines are currently muted. In the case that you have any questions, please send them via chat in the Zoom chat box, and I will forward those questions on to a member of Knesset Azaria for her to respond at the end of her comments. Rachel, please.
Okay, thank you, and good afternoon. I'm happy to be here speaking to you all, knowing that you are educators, and I know how important it is. That's how I feel when time gets hard. I think that educators are very important, and I'll also note on this notion later on. We're going through hard times in Jerusalem, but having said that, there are two aspects that I would want to relate to. One is that the entire state of Israel is going through hard times, but it seems that somehow Jerusalem is more, gets more attention, draws more attention on this issue. I think also, it is also because we have more terror attacks, but also I think because people kind of expect that there'll be terror attacks in Jerusalem, and in other cities it's like something that you don't expect, so even if it happens, it just kind of disappears, or people don't think about it too much. And that's one aspect. And the second is that these terror attacks are that you can't compare them to any one of the intifadas or any one of the huge waves we've had in the past. They were absolutely unbearable. When we had buses bombing down the streets of Jerusalem, when we had horrible bombing, really memories that we all have. But although this is an easier wave in a sense, it seems that we're reacting very, very strongly to it, and I would like to relate to that in a few words. I think that one reason that we are relating to it more drastically is, first of all, because of the social media. Our children are, teenagers. I'm a mother of 12-year-old, a mother of 4. My oldest is 12 years old, and social media is very much, there's a lot of activity on these issues, and there are a lot of pictures and short movies, and the news is everywhere on social media, and it seems as if in the past the terror attacks were kind of, in the newspaper, and then they were on TV. Today they're in our pockets, in the cell phones that we carry around with us. And it's like they're there all the time. WhatsApp is very big in Israel, so everyone's on WhatsApp, and like all the messages are sent out immediately. Even false alarm, kind of, you have it everywhere. And I think that that's one reason that we're reacting so dramatically. And the second reason is I think that this is kind of an after. We're kind of, I don't know if like post-traumatic stress disorder or something like that. We're kind of dealing with what we haven't dealt with properly in the past, or our memories from 10 or 15 years ago or 20 years ago that are kind of, mixing into this. And I think it's very important to realize that, because that if you just look at the clear statistics. So this wave is kind of minor in a sense, and we can see it especially when you look at the statistics of incoming tourists. That tourists from abroad, they keep coming to Israel. They don't feel that this wave has should change their plans. But internal tourism in Israel, people don't leave their houses. People aren't going to cafes. People aren't shopping. People are trying to avoid. They're just trying to stay at home to make sure that they're safe. And that really affects Jerusalem in many, many ways, because even if this wave is not as dramatic as the ones in the past, as far as the economy and as far as feeling in Jerusalem, it is it's really changing a lot. And this is something that we'll need to deal with, the fact that people are afraid, so our economy we're going to have to deal with this complication. I have to say that my family, myself, and a lot of my friends, we are keeping our everyday life, and it's very important. And I feel that this is something that we need to be pushed to do, because that's what gives you the strength. I want to describe something that a week ago, the Jerusalem. I'm not member of Jerusalem City Council anymore, and I'm not deputy mayor, even though I was in the past. Now I'm in the parliament, but the parents in Jerusalem, the PTA, the parents' leadership, and the mayor decided to go on strike because that there was a problem with the budget coming from the government regarding security guards outside of the schools. And I think that decision, I understand why they went on strike, but I think that decision basically made it much harder for many of the teenagers, because suddenly they stayed at home and suddenly they had more time to deal or to see what's going on, and they didn't keep their regular routine. And I think that keeping the regular routine is very, very important. And I do wonder if the fact that it's harder, that people are dealing so differently with this terror wave has to do with the fact that a lot of our leadership is telling us, you need to get weapons, you need to protect yourself. When other times in Israel, it was always, the army will protect you, we are here to protect you, you continue your daily life, this is what you're supposed to be doing. And I think this is something, it's a major change, I think, in the way we deal with the terror in Israeli society. I hope this is just, this point, and I hope that later on we will go back to the usual kind of, someone is there to protect you, we're doing everything we can, and not expecting the citizens of Israel to protect themselves. We've seen over the past week that there were 2 people that were killed by misinterpretation of police or other people. They thought that someone was a terrorist and he wasn't. And there was 1 person that was killed in a terror attack. And I think this is something that we will need to try to deal with. Regarding, when I want to go zoom out a bit, basically we are dealing with for almost the first time that the terror attacks, it's not Judea and Samaria, and it's not people that come from Judea and Samaria, and it's not so much, something organized by people, the PLO, or I don't know, very organized groups, but now it's more kind of individuals that go and hold their own, what they have planned out on their own. It can sometimes be 16-year-olders, it can be, early 20s, and there was even one case that was done by a 13-year-old child. And this, I think, has to do a lot with what's going on with ISIS, and the fact that everything is going back to social media, the fact that it's everywhere, and that's one issue, and the other is that it means that there's a lot of work that has to be done, since it's not as much in Judea and Samaria. A lot of them are residents of Jerusalem, and therefore it means that they go to schools that are handled by the municipality of Jerusalem, and this is challenging us in many ways, because we need to, on the one hand, deal with the victims and with the schools that have victims, and we need to find a way to work it out. And at the same time, there's a lot of work that has to be done with the Arabs that live in Jerusalem, with their families, making sure that even if someone from one of the classes, if a 13-year-older goes and does a terror attack, how do you comprehend it, and how do you discuss it with the children that are in his class? How do you make sure that no one imitates him? How do you make sure that they realize what actually had happened? And this is a big challenge. Another challenge I feel that we're dealing with in Jerusalem is that for the past few years, there was a lot of work done by grassroots organizations trying to find a way to talk in a language that will be inclusive and that also will make room for everyone in Jerusalem. I think that there is a big understanding amongst at least part of the residents of Jerusalem. Jerusalem is a very big city, or at least leadership in a lot of the social change organizations, that no one's going to disappear. I think that in Israeli society, especially regarding the Arabs and Jews, there's always this notion that, someone is going to disappear. And when the other group is going to disappear. And when the other group disappears, everything will be okay. And after 60-something years of the State of Israel, and after, and as we're, another generation growing into this situation, I think that in Jerusalem, there are more and more people that say this, no one's going to disappear. It doesn't mean that they're necessarily right-wing or left-wing. It's important for me to say it doesn't mean that the people that talk this way, they have the same idea of what the solution should be. But there is a very deep understanding that this is the situation. I hear myself talking, and it's almost surprising because of course no one will disappear. But I can't tell you how deep it is. It's like embedded in Israeli society that one of the sides will disappear. And once you realize no one's going to disappear, that's when you can start working on even, first of all, how to live now together. I'm not even talking about, long-term solution, but just how do you live together. And for the past 2-3 years, there's a lot of work that has been done. And now what's going on is threatening everything that has been done over the past few years. I can tell you that it's not only Jews and Arabs, it's all of, how do you make Jerusalem an inclusive city? And as we're talking now in the center of Jerusalem, there are groups every Thursday night sitting together and studying, sitting together and talking. We have, different people of the different parts of Jerusalem trying to, just kind of study something together, talk, get to know other people, and it's done in Kikar Zion, one of the center of Jerusalem. And I think that kind of shows the complexity of the situation, that is also, on the one hand, there are these terror attacks, and also the way we react is very hard. It is very stressful for people that live in Jerusalem and very stressful for the citizens of Israel. But at the same time, we're also, we realize that there will be a day after these terror attacks, and there are also the days before, and this is part of our living in the city that we love so much. So these are my words at this point, and I will be happy to take some questions.
Thank you, Member of Knesset Azaria. You have on the line representatives from 135 Jewish community day schools in English-speaking countries around the world. Tell us what we as educators and Jewish community leaders can do to support Israel right now. So, first of all, there is the usual support, order stuff online from stores in Jerusalem and stuff like that. But I think that we need to, what I feel often in Israel and everywhere, also in, discussions amongst Jews around the world, whenever we talk about Israel, is that everyone gets very quickly, the discussion becomes very loud. And very quickly, everyone has their, I'm right, you're wrong, and that there is only one way to do everything, and it's my way, and this is, I know you don't understand. And I think that as educators, I think that what is very important is not only to get the children used or the pupils, the students used to hearing other narratives, but also other ideas, but also I think in the 90s, everyone was talking about, you can hear something else even if you don't agree. And I think that we need to try working on how we can try and think of something that can bring us together, not only just hear something that we don't agree with.
I think that the next generation is a very important generation. We hope that they will be able to do a lot of the work that, former generations weren't successful. I can tell you that in Israel, the youth is very much aware of political issues, much more than I can tell you that, we were aware, not regular political, Israeli-Palestinian kind of, but deeper political understanding. And I think that once the next generation, also in the United States and around Jews around the world, will be aware of this deeper political issue, or, how do you create leadership, and how do you work leaders around the world, and how do you support Israel in, not only expect Israel to be exactly the way you want it to be, but realize that it's like family, you don't always agree, but that's part of who you are. I think that if you can work on these issues with your students, I think that would be huge support, not only now in these hard times, but also how do we build together the future.
Can you tell us a little bit about how Israel or how Jerusalem in particular are using the educational system to combat and to prevent future terror? Any examples or ideas that you have in mind?
Yeah, sure. First of all, a lot of work is being done in Eastern Jerusalem. We realize that the school system is a major way. It's a system that is, under our supervision and responsibility. And last year, when we had also a wave of terror during the operation in the south, we had a wave of terror in Jerusalem. And what we did at the time is that we located schools in Eastern Jerusalem where we had quite a few youngsters that were, part of the riots. And I know it sounds kind of prosaic, but what we did is that we lengthened their day at school till 8 o'clock in the evening, offering sports and music. And basically what we did is we kept them off the streets by offering these opportunities. So I know I can imagine what you're thinking when you hear this. It's not the usual answer, but this is what we did, and we were actually very successful at the time. We also know that quite a few of the pupils or the youngsters that were involved in terror attacks, now quite a few of them don't study in schools that are part of the city system, the local system, but they belong to the Islamic community. We don't have many of them in Jerusalem, but we have a few of them, and that's part of that. There's a lot of work that was done and is being done all the time with the headmasters, with the leaders of the schools in Jerusalem, East Jerusalem and West Jerusalem. We realize that they are major pivots. Do you say that in this situation? We know they work very hard to make sure that their students will be safe, both in Eastern and in Western Jerusalem. And in Eastern Jerusalem, they realize that the way that they'll be safe is to keep them, not that they won't be active in these riots. And it's interesting. It's always amazing to see how all educators, first of all, want to make sure that their students are safe and that they're, making the right decisions and, pushing towards better education. And it's always amazing to see how this can bring a lot of people together to work together. After the wave of terror last year, there was a group that was created of educators from ultra-Orthodox, Eastern Jerusalem, secular, modern Orthodox, that are trying to work together on these issues. It's not easy, but I think it's important to realize that this is part of what's going on. In Western Jerusalem, a lot of the work is, to discuss with children. I know I'm going back to WhatsApp because it is a big deal here. What you do in WhatsApp, what you do on social media, what you do on Facebook. You don't need to open pictures. Don't send on hard pictures or troubling pictures that were taken in the scenes the scenes of piguim, of terror attacks. How do you continue your everyday life? The school system is a very important place for children and for youngsters to continue their everyday life, to meet their friends. So in many ways, the school system is a very important part of continuing, and strengthening the city of Jerusalem.
When many of the educators and leaders on the call with you today get their information about Israel, they get them from news sites. Can you tell us what we're not seeing by getting most of our information from the international news?
I know. I know you don't see everything, in the sense that a lot of the news is kind of, there was an attack. It's not clear who hit who and stuff like that. But I think that what I described at the beginning of the way the Israelis are taking it in, how hard it is to cope with this terror attack, which I have to tell you honestly, I'm surprised by the way it's, that it's so hard for people to deal with it. We haven't seen that in the past, and this is something that I think we need to really figure out. Because if we don't have the strength, it will be much harder in the future. And I don't think, terror is leaving us and that everything will be okay in a couple of weeks and forever and ever. I think that we're going to have a few more waves. This is what history shows us. This is what we know. This is what intelligence expects. So I think that's something that you definitely don't see. I don't think you see how it affects people's decisions. I mean, I can even say there are more traffic jams today in Jerusalem because everyone takes their children to school by car. And, usually children, teenagers, they walk to school because everything is close, but everyone takes their children to school by cars, and that creates a lot of traffic jams. Now, it's not such a big deal to sit in a traffic jam, but it's just to show the way people live their life differently because of this wave of terror, and I think that's something you definitely don't see. I think also that you don't see what I talked about, the way people are trying to work together, whether they're right-wing or left-wing, and that's important for me to say. It's not like, left-wing that, always said we're not enemies, we need to work together. I think it comes from a different place of, we need to work together because everyone is here and we all have children and we need to figure it out. It's not about love, it's about realizing that this is life. And this is something I think you don't see on press. I know you don't see in international press.
And tell us about any hopeful signs that you see from where you stand.
I think that, you see, in the Knesset these days, these are very hard days. It's every time, in the parliament, every time we have a big, we sit in the big hall and we have a large-scale discussion, it's always someone gets up to talk, and then it's either the right wing yelling at the Arabs yelling at the right wing, and then the left wing joins in, and everyone is yelling at each other, and it's very hard to see it. Yesterday, Minister Elkin, the way the Knesset works is that the chair of the discussion can be from different parties. So one of the chairs is Ahmed Tibi from the Arab list, the Joint Arab List, and Minister Zev Elkin started talking, and he said he said things that Ahmed Tibi it was very hard for him to hear, and then Ahmed Tibi reacted very strongly, and Zev Elkin reacted very strongly, and at the end of the day, Ahmed Tibi got Zev Elkin out of the discussion, almost dragged out with the guards because he said what he said. He's not allowed to say it, and those are very hard sights. This is not something that we're supposed to see. But I think that I hope that the voice. After that, I got up and I gave this very strong speech saying, I understand that every one of the radical groups, it's, you want to fight with each other, but at the end of the day, we're 120 members of the Israeli parliament, and we need to make sure that people's lives will be better for the state of Israel, in the state of Israel. That is our responsibility. We can fight, but I suggest, we try not to fight, because no one's going to disappear. And I think, and I'll tell you, I posted it on Facebook this morning thinking, so maybe someone will hear it. And it's flying. It's going viral. It's everywhere. People are talking about it. And I think that this voice, this sound, saying it's not about if you love or you don't love, or if you hate or you don't hate. We're all here. No one's going to disappear. And now we want to live normal life. Let's work on this. We can't. And in Jerusalem, we feel it very strongly. We're not willing to burn down the city because some people want to have this major fight on different issues. We need to continue our life. It's 800,000 people. It's huge responsibility, and we're working together. So I think that I'm not the only one. I told you about what's happening in Kikar Tzion and the meeting that is being held now, and it's being held every Thursday for the past few months. I see a lot of people, not a lot. I see that this voice and this language is starting to happen. And I think it's going to take a while till we can make this voice into a major voice that Israelis talk. And I think part of it is also realizing that it's not about if you're right wing or left wing. It's just realizing this is the situation, and now what do we do next? And I hope that's what makes me optimistic. And something else that makes me very optimistic and gives me a lot of hope is that we are a nation of pioneers. We can handle everything. We have been handling everything. We know how to get things together and move forward, and we've done it so many times in the history of Israel. So I know that we'll be able to do it also now.
Can you tell us about some of the stronger organizational voices, some of the organizations that you see in the country who echo this sentiment that you just described? Some of the educators on the line can highlight those voices for their students.
So there are two organizations that bring these voices very clearly. One is the Yerushalmit movement. It's a movement that we formed in Jerusalem once we realized that it's not enough to work politically. You also need to have people that will work, on ground, kind of echoing or creating this kind of language. And the second is Shacharit. Shacharit is an organization that they talk about common good. How do you work together for the future of Israel? Again, not bringing it into we need to work together. The way it is often in Israel is that, you work together against. So we're not working together against. So Shacharit is another one of these organizations. They're not enough. And I don't feel, and that's something that's challenging because I don't feel that there are enough people that can narrate kind of, or can put everything into words. But I feel that this is something that people start, it's like tickling at the edge of our fingers, and it will happen soon. But the two organizations, Yerushalmit movement and Shacharit.
Thank you. And in our final minute together, if there's one message for all of us to take away from today's call and tell our school communities, what would that message be?
Wow. Probably once I get off the phone, I'll have a better message. But what pops into my head for the first thing that came into my head is that it's not easy. Okay, and I don't think it's ever been easy. And Israeli society, and being Jewish, and this is part of who we are and the way it is. But at the same time, I do think things will be much better. And I also know that it's probably one of the most interesting times to be living in. I mean, there's so much going on when we're really working together to figure out how to make this work. And I think that every generation in Israeli society has, or even it's also Israeli society relating to Jews around the world. Every generation had its own challenge. The first generation had to found the state of Israel, even though no one thought it would actually happen. It was like a dream that no one knew if it would happen. When Ben Gurion decided, or when the people decided to announce the state of Israel, they didn't know if it would last more than a day. The next generation had fought through very horrible wars, Six-Day War that was challenging, then the Yom Kippur War that was horrible, and then the Lebanon War that, no one knew if would actually, what would happen there. And they could handle it. The third generation had to deal with the economic situation in Israel. And after huge, our stock market fell, and we had to change the currency twice, and we did it. And I think this generation, we have to figure out how, who we are, what we stand for, and how do we make it work, and how do we make Israel a place that, it's clear what will work, who we are, and create a better future for Israel. So if that the generations could do it, so I guess it's our responsibility to make it work also this time.
Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in thanking Member of Knesset Rachel Azaria, calling us from Jerusalem today, October 22nd, 2015. Member of Knesset Azaria, we representatives of the 135 RAVSAK schools around the world come together with tefillot this Friday night. Kumi tzei mitoch hafecha. We're sending you our support and our strength. Thank you for all that you do on behalf of Israel and the Jewish people. Thanks for joining us today.